I mean, can I really say what I think anyway? Without, I mean, let's be honest here. So
This is the face of a frustrated superstar. Sidney Crosby received his first ever game misconduct after this altercation with Kings defenseman Mikey Anderson. Sid was heated after getting cross-checked in front of the net and there being no call. So when he went to go give his opinion, this referee straight up tossed him from the game. The worst part is that when Penguins coach Mike Sullivan tried to get an explanation, Sullivan said the ref had zero interest in giving one. But Crosby's comments after the game is a sentiment that a lot of the players and even coaches share throughout the NHL. Officiating may be the most thankless job in all of sports. No one wants to be a referee, and that's evident by the shortage of hockey refs in general. It's incredibly easy to criticize, but the issue with the NHL officiating for years has been consistency and the fact that you can't say anything about it without getting in trouble. Players simply don't know what the standard is anymore for what they can and can't do. Even though this comment is coming from a player like Brad Marchand, players still need to know what the standard is heading into the game. Let's look at a brief example of the inconsistency. On one night, this is a penalty for tripping, and the next night, this is completely fine, even with the official standing literally right there. The consistency of what is a penalty is pretty much a crapshoot on any given night, simply based on who is officiating that particular game. Coaches and players don't know what the standard is anymore, and it's gotten to the point where if you criticize an NHL official, you run the risk of being fined by the league. Florida Panthers coach Paul Maurice made that mistake earlier this year when he criticized the officials in a game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He then proceeded to say that it would be fiscally irresponsible for him to say anything ever again, and that isn't a good sign if you want to hold your refs accountable for making the correct calls. Even though the league is trying to protect the referees and the decisions that they make, there still needs to be some sort of accountability. I mean, even if you look at this highlight goal scored by McDavid the other night, it was beautiful except for the fact that you could argue that it only happens because of a borderline cross-check. Now, I don't like a game where this is called a penalty, but based on the way McDavid extends his stick, this is what a cross-check looks like. If Shabbat falls here, let's be honest, this is called a penalty. That being said, if this were the playoffs and that happened, that would never be a penalty anyways. And that is the main issue, because if you're a hockey fan, you know that officiating in the playoffs is much different than it is in the regular season. They are two completely different things, as in the regular season, calls are usually a lot tighter and strict, but as soon as the playoffs start, the whistles tend to go away unless the call is obvious. Even then, depending on the game, sometimes the refs still won't call a penalty just because they don't want to be the deciding factor in a team's fate in the playoffs. That's why when you get rookie teams entering the NHL playoffs, they don't usually last as long because they have to adapt to a completely new style of game, and really that experience can only be learned by playing more playoff hockey. In the playoffs, the officiating is less strict, and the teams that can adapt the fastest usually have the most success. The question is, why should it ever change based on the time of the year? This has been the way that the game has been officiated for years now, and as a player, you want to know what type of game you're getting into. Knowing this can change the entire strategy of a team heading into the game, and that alone can change the outcome. But when you have the face of the NHL having to restrain what he really thinks about officiating, that's not a good look for the league whatsoever. So what do you think about the officiating so far this season? How do you think they should improve it or at least make it more consistent? I've seen this idea float around a bit, but having the refs do a post-game interview to get their opinion on what they saw in a particular play could be interesting, but it could also be a disaster. Let me know your thoughts down below, and before we end the video, I want to thank our sponsor, Hockey Training. Hockey Training helps players improve their game off the ice in the comfort of their own home. They have a fantastic YouTube channel with tons of free resources to help players with their off-ice training, and a convenient app loaded with drills, exercises, and guides to help players take their game to the next level. Make sure you check them out in our description, and if you like this video and want to see more just like it, click on any of the links right here.